I believe we all have that energetic vital force that is trying to guide us back to like some sort of balance, I guess, in that way. I think that we all have the capacity for reflection, for depth, for going and taking responsibility for the pieces that are ours and tending to those pieces. So I don't think it's always easy. And I think sometimes it's way easier to say it can be a quick fix or a pill that will fix this, right? And so it's a journey. It's a journey between those two things.
Hello and welcome to the Freedom Seeker Show, the place where we have unfiltered conversations that matter to women. I'm your host, Yvonne Winkler, author, facilitator, and feminine wisdom coach, and mental health advocate. And I want to acknowledge that I am on the unceded traditional territories of the Comox First Nation. And here today with me, I have Indigenous Ojibwe healer, best-selling author, speaker, guide, and oracle deck creator, Asha Frost. Drawing on her ancestral knowledge and innate gifts, Asha has become a prominent figure in the field of Indigenous healing, garnering recognition on both local and international platforms. She has created transformative experiences for thousands with her heart, profound wisdom, and unwavering dedication to her heritage. As an author, Asha has eloquently captured the essence of Indigenous wisdom in her written words. Her book, You Are the Medicine, and her deck, The Sacred Medicine Oracle, are powerful testaments to our healing potential that lies in all of us. She loves sharing her medicine in powerful ways through ceremonies, workshops, and speaking events. With her insightful storytelling and compassionate voice, Asha has succeeded in bridging the gap between traditional Indigenous wisdom and the modern world, offering guidance and inspiration to a diverse audience seeking personal empowerment. And her work serves as a guiding light, reminding us all of our power and the power of medicine that lies within us. Asha lives on her ancestral Anishinaabe territories with her husband and 2 boys, the ones who remind her that she's made of stardust. Welcome, Asha.
Thank you for having me.
I am so very much excited to have you on the show today. Before we embark on our little journey today on You Are the Medicine, I wanted to take a moment first to wholeheartedly acknowledge you, Asha, for your remarkable achievement and the immense impact you made with the work that you do and this book that you wrote, not just on a local, but also on a global scale. Your dedication to guiding individuals and all of us, the collective, towards healing is truly inspiring to me. And as an author myself, I also deeply appreciate the profound effort and vulnerability and skill required to craft such an amazing book that resonates with readers. So thank you for being here. Thank you for the work that you do. And congratulations on the success of You Are the Medicine. And I'm so honored to have this opportunity to talk with you today.
Oh, it's such a pleasure. Thank you so much for seeing me. I appreciate that.
Mm-hmm. So your book, You Are the Medicine, landed in my hands a few months back, and at the exact perfect right moment in life, as I'm sure is no surprise to you. we receive these gifts when we need them the most. And just to give you a little bit of background on me, I've spent the last 6 years digging deep and unraveling my spiritual and genetic makeup, doing a lot of healing, doing a lot of growing. And what I really appreciated about your words is the encouragement to bring my ancestors and my lineage into my healing work. I believe that it's also absolutely no coincidence that we are having this conversation just days after, well, a week after the seventh moon of creation, which in your heritage is the raspberry moon. Um, and in my lineage, the seventh moon is called the hay moon for the haymaking in early summers, which I do fondly remember with my father and my grandfather. Unfortunately, the rest of my heritage has been a little bit lost on me. I immigrated to Canada when I was 15, and your book gave me hope, especially this chapter and the guidance that you give in this chapter, the meditations that I can tap into that lineage again and draw some of that wisdom. So with this moon, you really shine a light on the intergenerational trauma and reclamation and our collective longing for connection. So why don't we begin with how have you been led onto this journey, and what has really inspired you to delve into Indigenous healing work?
Thank you. This chapter was the hardest one to write. It was the chapter that where that sort of stall came in my writing, and I guess you could call it writer's block. But at the time, I also felt there was like energies at play. Just the energetic realm was moving around, and when I wrote this, it was 2020. So there was the discovery of children at residential schools that they were buried and they had died. And so everything was like being stirred up and brought up from like the shadow to the light. And so it was really swirling around collectively. So when I wrote this, I wanted to share the impact that trauma had had on me, being like my grandparents being in residential school, and people always say, you need to get over it. Why are you not over it? Why are you still talking about this? And the impact on me was that I didn't have a direct connection, like many people, to their ancestral, storytelling or language or medicines or ceremonies because of that colonization that happened. So I know that's a common experience in many heritages and many lineages for many people, because I hear it in my communities. Like, I don't know who my ancestors are. I don't know the ceremonies they practiced. Our lineage, Indigenous traditions and medicines and ceremonies have been held quite intact. It's a miracle because of how many energies have tried to separate us, disconnect us, bury us, that it's still alive, which is why I think people are so drawn to this, because of that intact energy that just flows, because we're so connected to the earth, all of us. So it just returns us back to that. So this chapter in particular, I felt was so important to speak on, because the children were coming to the surface and everybody was starting to see the truth. And I thought, I need to speak to this, and I need to speak to how that truth has impacted my current reality, because people say, oh, that history is history, but it's not, right? And that's true for all of us, is that our history impacts our cellular memory and what's going on. And the present, we can choose to take responsibility for that healing, which is what my book invites us to do. Is this, we can shame and blame and hold on to that victim sort of energy, or we can take responsibility and say, how am I going to meet this energy? What am I going to do with it?
Yeah, so well said. And there is a question later that I do have about that. What you spoke to about having it still in your body, and you speak about that in your book. So I'd like to circle back to that. Before we go there, though, I wanted to lead this a little bit to how you started the book, because I feel like this conversation needs to be had, and it was very powerful message that you had in there in the beginning. It landed very powerfully on me. And so let me just explain to the audience. In the book, Asha wrote a letter to white women, and you wrote that letter to us, I think 2 years before you actually wrote the book, and it went viral on social media. And you also say that it was a disruptor. It disrupted, and some people, had some backlash, and other people were supportive. Can you expand on the intentions behind the letter and the subsequent backlash and support that you received, and what that did for you and to you?
It was a breaking open, even for this path, I think, right? it was in my body for 10 years at least. And I would speak to some of my dearest friends about it. And one of my friends said to me, like, it was like I would see all of these white women taking our clothing and our medicines and doing smudging. And at the time, social media was sort of just starting, right? Like, of sort of the ads, so that you would see a ton of people using sage in their ads, and not always in the most respectful way. There was always like people who really tried to honor the medicine, and then there was those who were just like using it to, in a joking way. And I had spent so long even not even feeling worthy to even use our medicines because of all the shame and the um, all of that colonial trauma trying to disconnect us, and it worked. So when I would see this, I would start to shake and think, why are these white women using these medicines with ease when it's taking me so long to even feel like worthy of doing that myself?
So you
You
felt it
know,
in your body, like
I did, I did. It was like a big shake. It was a big shaking. So it had to come out, but it took a long time. So I wrote something at the time. I had a blog on my website. I've been in business for almost 20 years, and it's like I'm like a little turtle, just kind of like moving along, doing my thing. I was in like doing healing work at the time, and I didn't expect it to go viral. I shared it on Instagram, and then it did, and I wasn't ready for that because, well, in my intention behind it was from heart. I really wrote it as an invitation. Can we listen to one another? No, it wasn't to shame or to put down or to say you're bad. But of course, people project however they're, whatever state they're in, how they read it. So I'd say half the people got really mad. Half the people, were like, "Oh, I needed to hear this," or even not even like, "I agree with you, but this is shifting something for me." And that's all that. Like, I don't need you to agree with me, but like, can we have a conversation? Can we expand the conversation? Can we open up the space? So that was the other sort of 50%. And the disrupting energy of that was I disrupted myself too, because it was like all this energy coming at me. I think I wrote this in the book. I couldn't go to my emails for about a year. I couldn't go to DMs. Like, I needed to hire somebody because I didn't know what was coming into my inbox. People were angry or they wanted to share their stories. And I'm so grateful people are sharing their stories, but it would be like novels in my inbox and novels in my DMs about their heritage or their past lives or all of the stuff that I didn't have. Like, I couldn't hold the space for all of that. So it was huge. And I think that was the catalyst, obviously, for me writing the book, because at the time that letter um, opened me up to thinking, oh, there might be a path here. And somebody invited me into this contest with Hay House. So that's how it started. As I wrote like an essay to apply for this contest. And I included the letter. And I said, you basically need more Indigenous voices in your publishing house because it's all white women taking our teachings and using them for profit. So, how can you change that dynamic? And maybe I'm going to be one of those people to help.
and I am so very grateful that you did. Um, Clearly, I am a white woman, and I, I, I really, you asked us to reflect in your book. You asked us to reflect on how it lands. Um, I was very saddened by the letter. Um, I felt the truth in it, and I also recognized the things I had done, maybe even very unconsciously, that I didn't realize would hurt um, your or the background. And you do such an amazing job explaining that in your book. So for anyone who has more questions on this, please get the book and read it. It has really opened my eyes, and I just want to also say for myself, I'm sorry, for my ignorance, and I know better now, and I hope I can do better. So in your book, you do invite us to reflect on that. And so my question to you is, um, can you expand a little bit more on your lived experience of that intergenerational trauma that you talk about here in chapter 7?
Yeah, I think that a lot of it is sort of, it coexists with that shame piece of, um, my grandparents, the missionaries came and everybody got colonized into the church and even the medical system. So I think for the longest time, I got sick with lupus when I was 17. And I thought, after starting my healing journey, I thought, where are all the medicine people that are supposed to be around me from my lineage? Where are all the medicines that I'm supposed to know about? how do I not know about ceremonies that can heal me? Like, that's what the separation has created. And then it just was like painstaking process to try to reclaim and first come to the place of, oh my gosh, I shouldn't feel ashamed that I don't know about this. It's not my fault that I don't know these things. It's like as a result of this colonization. But that was really hard to work through because I just kept holding on to that internal, like, why don't I know? I'm not enough. All of those things that still are so pervasive in our communities, I think. This whole, am I Indigenous enough? Really, really comes from that colonizer voice. And it stops us from connecting to our medicines. So, yeah, that impact of that not knowing my own language. I mean, I've tried to learn it many times, and it's a really hard language to learn. So even reading my book on the Audible version, I had to make sure that I was very like perfectionistic about it, thinking, what if I mess this up? And an Anishinaabe person says she doesn't know what she's doing, or an elder says like, you said that word wrong. Like there was so much hypervigilance around all of that, and I could root it back to the trauma and then also see, well, I'm trying to reclaim, and if I only reclaim one word properly, then that's enough. But it was like so much self-compassion is needed in that process of unwinding that generational harm and trauma and coming home to, what can I do now? How can my children be proud in the world of walking in this way and not hold the same energy that I have for so many years? So I see that they do. So that's really beautiful. I know somehow something I've done has created that for them, which is really beautiful.
Well, in the book, you talk about that experience where your son actually showed you how he has taken on, or how his soul, his body has taken on that intergenerational trauma. And one day when you were dropping him off at school, he said, "Don't let them take me," and that was so powerful. And also very relatable to some people that have experienced war and such trauma, such deep trauma, how it manifests in the body and how it lives on generationally. So I could relate to it. I'm from Germany, so there's deep trauma in my lineage around war and rape and so on. And so I could relate to that. Obviously, I'm not comparing my story to yours. I'm just saying I could relate to what you were saying with that intergenerational trauma. And I also welcomed your wake up to for the reader to really see that there's more to it than just getting over it. Like this is so deeply rooted that it even affects your children who have not maybe read or seen any of this stuff yet, right? I don't know how old your kids are, so
Yeah, it's true. And it's interesting because I've experienced racism more than they have, I would say. Like in their young lives, they're 6 and 11, and they're really proud of being Indigenous. And when I was their age, I was not, because we lived in a I was really trying to assimilate to the current culture around me. So I did not have that pride that they do now. And I do think that many people can relate to that in different ways, that generational trauma and how it impacts you. I think the hard part about living on Turtle Island here on this land is that narrative of like, yeah, we get it. Why are we still talking about this? Like, yes, it was my ancestors who did this. It wasn't me. And I think what people don't see perhaps are the impacts on First Nations reserves, where there's still lack of clean water, where there's still so much racism, and people just see Indigenous people with their internal biases, where there's a high rate of suicide attempts and alcoholism and drug abuse and incarceration. Like all of these things are missing and murdered Indigenous women. Our women go missing and murdered so much higher of a rate on Turtle Island than white women do, and people don't really seem to care. That the police don't really care. So those things are happening today, and they continue to happen. So then, how do we open our hearts to that? And I hope that part of me sharing some of those truths, even though I don't live really far up north, is to invite people into the conversation and to break their heart open, to say, oh my goodness, I didn't know, and as you said, now I can do better. How can I take steps forward?
yeah, 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 exactly, well said. And that is exactly what your book did for me. Now your deck, if we can dive into that, for a minute. That was a. I mean, it obviously goes hand in hand. It encompasses what you do for work, but I felt the deck was more of how you actually reconnected with your medicine and with your uh, with your spirit. Like in the book again, you talk about how your grandparents weren't able to teach you the wisdom and the medicine because they weren't allowed. It was taken away from them. But now they come to you in spirit and they do that. So is that how this deck evolved?
Yeah, the deck was my dream. Like I mean, I never actually thought I was ever going to write a book. To be honest, it wasn't one of those things that I had in my vision, but the deck was. Since I was 20, I remember going to Hay House conferences, and I just really thought I could do that one day. I love that. I didn't know how it was going to unfold. I really didn't, and it took 25 years for it to unfold in the way that it has. But I had that in my heart, and I had a membership and a Facebook group for a really long time where I would just do like little readings. So it would be like choose, out of these four images, choose one, and then I'll give you like, I'll get spirit to channel an answer for you. So I've been doing it for years, and then I thought, oh my goodness, this is just like a deck. It's just like a deck that's like online that I can translate. So the beings that came forward for the deck, I just sat and I said, what 56 kind of even like archetypes or spiritual energies want to come forward that are going to work together here. And those are the ones that came forward. And yeah, they come from a group that I call the grandmothers. And I feel those are like the ancestral energies that come through. My grandmother is still here on the earthly realm. My grandfather has passed. He informs some of this too, but it just comes forward and flows. And yeah, it's joy. Like the deck for me was joyful.
Mm. Ah, and that's amazing, especially after launching a book. I like again, I haven't been able to publish with Hay House, but I'm certain that your inbox and your requests for speaking and for book signings and whatnot were quite um, tiring, I would imagine.
Well, it was the pandemic, right? Like it came out during the pandemic when everything was shut down, especially in Ontario. We were the most shut down place, I swear, in North America. It was really interesting. So I did a lot of online things. It was like everything was online. And I didn't even know if I didn't have a book signing at my local bookstore because it wasn't even a possibility. They weren't even open anymore. And even for a book celebration party for my book launch, I didn't have one until later on because nothing was open. We couldn't rent anything. We couldn't go inside. It was a very different process. So if I ever wrote another book, I think I would do those things over just to kind of have a different experience. And the deck came out so close. I was still doing like the last edits for the book when the first edits for the deck were due. So it was kind of like a interesting process of dancing between those two things and knowing the deck was going to come out, holding that book launch. But I will say launching two things within a year was a lot. I don't know if I'd recommend that to myself again because it was a lot of just like lifting and promoting and a ton of podcasts. And I think I really burnt myself out. So I have a deck coming out December 2024, my next deck, and I'm glad there's more space because I just need a little bit more. I need a bit of a rest.
Yeah, absolutely, and also to soak up the celebration of it, and the just the success of it, the accomplishment. I mean, both are quite like one was your dream, the other one, like I said earlier, a remarkable accomplishment. It's a beautiful book, it's well done, and to be published by Hay House is also an incredible achievement in and of itself. That is not easy.
I don't know if I've like really truly like I think that's what the pandemic did. It was a bit of like a freeze, right, for my nervous system where it was like I have to get through this. Both of my kids, my littlest was only 2 when I started writing. They were both home. I was homeschooling, running my business, writing the book. Like it was just a lot of compression. And one of my friends said to me, "You did this. It was like a diamond. You know how you like squish it and then the diamonds, like that's what it was. Imagine what you could write if you had more space." And I've thought about that when I've written this recent deck because it's not the pandemic anymore. So it's just felt more like just spacious and beautiful and more of a dance, I guess, than that. So I appreciate that because I think I did work, I did pour so much into that book. And it was a little bit like that squishing a diamond and like all this compression and trying to like get that beauty through there. So
Well, the pressure worked. You definitely did a great job. So in the book, going back to the book for a moment, you really emphasize the importance of embracing our own unique medicine.
Mm.
How can women navigate that balance between honoring their individual experiences and backgrounds while at the same time respecting and learning from a diverse healing spectrum and traditions like your Indigenous culture?
I think the people that I mentor, the people in my programs, what I notice, the ones that sort of seem to meld at the best, they have a sense of who they are. And I know we don't always know, or we can't always read that back, but they have a sense of, when I show up in a room, this is the presence that I carry. When I am with somebody in a relational way, this is the space I hold. They just seem to have like an understanding. Maybe it's a confidence or just like a knowing. So I think that is a really important thing to work on or to uncover. Is just that true nature, as I talk about in the book. And it doesn't have to be something complicated or complex or like heroic, right? It's just like your true nature and how do you hold your own charge in the world. And I think that when you have that and then you receive teachings from a teacher such as myself or others, there's a beautiful melding that can happen because you think, oh, that's wisdom, that's beautiful wisdom. Oh, ancestors, how does my wisdom connect with that, right? And then there's like a weaving. So I think it sounds complicated, but it really isn't. It's just like, how can I weave my energy into this teaching? I'm not going to take it or extract it and be like, this is mine. It's just like, oh no, I've got my own understanding of that. So, and also like from a respect way, it's like respect where the teachings have come from, name your teachers, honor the lands that you're on. I think there's some very just basic things that we can do that open the space for a deeper reverence for what you're learning.
Yeah. Oh, thank you for that. That is so helpful. And also something that stood out to me in the book, which was that the jokes that people have made towards you, and that is what you meant when you said it was disrespectful to my heritage and to our medicine. So one example, I believe, was you talked about smudging.
Mhm.
You talked about smudging earlier too, how people were just making fun with it. I can't think off the top of my head right now of another example that you used in the book.
Spirit animals. I think that was like a habit for a long time, right? So it's like my BFF, that's my spirit animal, or coffee's my spirit animal, whatever that is. That was like a big thing at the time, maybe 2 years ago, is hashtagging everywhere. And yeah, I think it just takes that sacredness away, takes that reverence away, and also you're kind of just taking that teaching to for a joke. Like you're not really seeing the people you're taking it from, and you're not really acknowledging the history of that. So those things can be really harmful.
So, how do you believe that this ancient wisdom can offer guidance and healing to individuals in the modern world?
Hmm. I think that is part of my sole purpose, is that bridge between that traditional wisdom and the modern world. And it's hard. Like I don't know if I wish I chose this. Like I sometimes I think it's easier to stay in the traditional and to stay in the old ways because it seems more accepted somehow. But when you're trying to bridge that gap, I do believe we evolve. We need to. We do. We evolve. We need to evolve these teachings. I think that Indigenous teachings bring us back to reciprocity and love and spirit to spirit connection. So that's where I come from the most, is like, how can, no matter what I'm teaching, how can we connect back to that spiritual place within us? I think that Indigenous people always have an understanding that is just as important as our mind, just as important as our heart or our bodies, right? That spirit's important. So it's weaving spirit through your daily life, weaving ceremony through your daily life. It doesn't have to look a certain way. I feel like that rigidity can get us caught up in our minds. So I do like to see like even our conversation as a ceremony. How can we set that up so then our guides, our ancestors are around us. We have animal spirits that are guiding us, right? How can we bring that into, infuse it into our day? I think that's how I'd like those teachings to be brought forward, is just that presence that I think we all need, which sounds kind of just boring, but I think that that's the most important thing.
It's the most important, and it is hard. It is much harder than it might sound. To stay present and to be um, on on a natural in a natural gratitude for what we have, what we walk on, just even a land acknowledgement. It's such a simple thing, and yet it doesn't happen all the time. It takes some shifting. So I love what you bring forth, and I'm just thinking about all the ways I can incorporate it more. What really draws me to your medicine is how it's connected to the earth. A lot of my energy is really grounding and connected to earth, and so having that appreciation and gratitude for everything that walks it, and the trees and what grows, is what really draws me to it. So it's something that I want to, and I think I do a pretty good job of it, but I can always up that a little bit as well. But I is moving here to Vancouver Island was 100% a huge leap for us in that direction of just really honoring and being grateful for what we have here.
And where were you before?
In Alberta.
Oh, okay. Oh,
Mm-hmm.
wow. Yes.
Yeah.
Sounds
And
beautiful.
before that, I was in Nova Scotia. So my first introduction when we first came to Canada was to the Mi'kmaq First Nation. And then in Alberta, I have to say I did not pay a lot of attention to it. And here, and I think it has to do also with the size of where I was. Like in Alberta, I was in a big city, whereas in Nova Scotia and here, I'm in a smaller community. So the Indigenous culture is more present than it was for me in the big city. So yeah, just
Beautiful.
noticing. Yeah, just noticing. One last question that I have for you here is that your book titles obviously suggest that we can heal ourselves. And would you mind elaborating a little bit on that concept of how readers can tap into their own inner medicine?
Yeah, that premise or that vision came from my years of practicing as a homeopath, where I would see the person's medicine, even then when they couldn't see it, or when it was buried, or they had shame wrapped around it. And then I would come up with the energetic frequency that was matched to them, right? What they weren't seeing to bring that out. So I would see that they did have this incredible medicine, and they just needed a catalytic reminder or an energetic, blip of like, this is who you are. So I believe we all have that energetic vital force that is trying to guide us back to like sort of some sort of balance, I guess, in that way. I think that we all have the capacity for reflection, for depth, for going and taking responsibility for the pieces that are ours and tending to those pieces. So I don't think it's always easy, and I think sometimes it's way easier to say it can be a quick fix or a pill that will fix this, right? And so it's a journey. It's a journey between those two things, but I think that we all have that capacity to bring healing to our lives, whether that's physically or mentally, emotionally, spiritually. I do think they all kind of go together. But I know this because of my journey with lupus and the times where I've been really sick, the times that I have somehow moved through that, the wisdom I've gained from that. So it's been like this lifetime journey of just like that in my physical body, which has deepened my spiritual body and which has brought sometimes heartbreaking moments, but so much love, I think, into my life too.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Asha, for your unwavering dedication and your powerful words and your commitment to preserving and sharing the Indigenous wisdom. Do you have any last thoughts or final wisdom that you would like to impart on us?
No, I think I'm grateful for what I can say as a reflection back to you is like your reciprocity, and this is what I think. This is what true reciprocity looks like between non-Indigenous person and Indigenous person. So I'm just really grateful for that, and I hope that people can watch you in that because I can feel the gratitude and the humility that you hold around these issues. And thank you for uplifting my voice and my stories. I'm really grateful.
Yeah, I cannot wait for your next deck, and hopefully another book as well. So keep on writing. I do believe we need more voices and more stories so that we can actually, not actually, so that we can hear and see. How can people get in touch with you?
Well, the best way probably is on Instagram. It's asha.frost. I'm there the most on social media. You can check out my website, ashafrost.com. And yeah, I mean, I love hearing stories of how my book or my cards are touching people. Those that keeps me going because you don't know. You put something out there in the world and it just goes and it flies, it has wings of its own, and then you're just like, now what? So I love hearing people's reflections and how it touches their spirit.
Mm, yeah. So go buy the book, buy the deck as well if you feel so inclined, and follow Asha on social media on Instagram. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for being here, Asha. I really appreciate you, and so does the community. I'm certain of it. We had a couple of people comment saying, it's such a great book, and it's one of her favorite decks. So wanted to share that with you as well. Take good care, and I look forward to hearing from you again soon.
Take care. Thank you. Bye for now.